Hi, I'm Tom Goro, President of the Global Coral Reef Alliance and Chief Scientist of Blue Regeneration SL. And I'm here to show you how to climate-proof coastlines by regenerating severely eroded beaches, which we do by growing back the natural marine ecosystems, coral reefs, seagrasses, oyster reefs, salt marshes, mangroves, and fisheries in front of them. We do this using Biorock Technology. It's a critical urgency. Half the world's beaches will disappear by the end of this century at present rates of erosion. All the major coastal cities of the world face flooding. Billions of people could become climate change refugees and whole countries could vanish. And these are serious underestimates because they don't take into account the fact that global sea level rise is accelerating rapidly and the storm strength is increasing because of global warming. So this will make coastal flooding far more severe soon, and the fact is we're simply unprepared for what is about to hit us. We can solve these problems using a remarkable technology called Biorock. This is also known by older names: mineral accretion technology, electric reefs, seacrete, or cement, but they're all the same as Biorock technology. What Biorock technology does is very unique. It uses low, safe voltage, direct current electricity applied to steel structures in the sea to grow solid limestone rock up to 2 to 3 times harder than concrete over their surfaces. They can be grown in any size or shape in the ocean. They're remarkable because they're the only marine construction material that is growing, and it gets stronger with age. This was originally invented by architect Wolf Hilberts in order to produce building materials in the sea back in the 1970s, and in the 1980s he worked with me in Jamaica in order to apply this to regenerating coral reefs and other marine ecosystems. Biorock is the only marine construction material that is growing. It gets strong with age and it grows back where it's damaged. All other marine construction materials inevitably rust, corrode, crumble, and collapse as they age, and they're very expensive to repair, and they have to be rebuilt again and again because they inevitably fail. In contrast, Biorock structures are permanent. They have a unique feature. As this figure shows here, a Biorock reef that's been in the ocean for 11 years was hit by a boat. That cracked off some of the limestone rock and exposed the bare metal that had been in the ocean for 11 years, and there's no rusting on it at all. More amazing, 1 year later, that damage had healed itself. It had grown back over. So this is the only marine construction material that essentially lasts forever and repairs itself and can be grown to fit the needs. Biorock technology is not only unique for marine construction, it also is a fundamental biological breakthrough because it stimulates the settlement, the growth, the survival, and the resistance to extreme environmental stress of all marine organisms that we have looked at. We have grown more than 600 Biorock reefs in around 44 countries all around the world, with around 500 of those in Indonesia. We're seeing now that all coastal ecosystems around the world are in advanced collapse. Overfishing is one cause, but they're collapsing from the bottom up due to global climate change and pollution at the same time. As a result, these degraded ecosystems are no longer able to protect coasts from waves, provide sand, or provide fish for people. Biorock technology grows these ecosystems back at record rates and regenerates their ecosystem services and their biodiversity at a fraction of the cost of concrete and rock walls. These pictures, for example, show a location in Bali 10 years apart. When we began this project, you can see we're laying cables down to provide low voltage electricity to Biorock reefs, and there's essentially nothing alive. 10 years later, it was almost completely covered with corals that had spontaneously settled and grown by themselves in that area. Coral reefs are nature's best form of coastal protection and nature's greatest builders of sand beaches. That's because coral reefs are porous, permeable structures that allow waves to pass through them without breaking, and they grow right back if they're damaged. Biorock reefs are grown the same way as coral reefs do. They're open frameworks full of holes that absorb wave energy as they pass through. This is a very important distinction. Here's an example of a Biorock reef growing in waters 1 meter deep, and this is after Hurricane Irma. Category 5 waves broke right on top of this site. There was no damage to it. Our Biorock reef cemented itself solidly to the bottom. The corals grew right up through it, and they grew at very fast rates. Behind this reef every house and every hotel was destroyed by that hurricane. The waves must have been about 10 meters high at the spot. So biorock reefs, if constructed properly, survive wave damage, they grow back quickly, and they provide high surface area that absorbs wave energy. A healthy coral reef can absorb up to 97% of wave energy before it reaches the shore. That's where they're so efficient. But where they're gone, they don't absorb any at all. These biorock reefs that are shown here in Grand Turk and the Turks and Caicos Island, the photo on the left was taken 2 weeks before the two worst hurricanes in their history that damaged about 85 or 90% of all the buildings on the island. The second picture was taken 2 weeks after. We had transplanted thousands of corals that were being killed by a cruise ship pier. The prop wash from the cruise ships were smothering these corals. We transplanted them to this biorock reef, and they were only loosely attached. This structure was not attached to the bottom in any way. It was simply sitting on the sand. It wasn't even welded. We didn't have the electricity to weld. It was simply hand-tied together with wires. We lost almost none of the corals there. The waves went through this structure without any damage. In fact, the sand built up underneath the structure. They served to trap sand under them. In contrast, the solid objects that you see in the center, those concrete blocks, half of them were ripped out and thrown out by the storm. And solid concrete artificial reefs nearby literally caused so much scour and erosion around them that they sunk into the sand and disappeared, whereas the sand built up under the biorock reef. So this shows that biorock reefs function the way real reefs do, in a very different way than solid breakwaters do. They can be built in any size or shape. This is a 4-year-old biorock reef in Bali, and another 4-year-old reef. As you can see, we trap wave energy to provide home for corals and fish, and they create very lush ecosystems. In this particular village in Bali, in Pemuteran, the entire village makes its living off ecotourism of people who come to see these reefs. The following two videos clearly show the difference in wave behavior hitting a natural reef versus an artificial stone wall. They were taken on November 1st, 2019, during a severe winter storm in San Juan, Puerto Rico, by Eloy Perez of the Coalición Restauración Ecosistemas Santurcinos. The first video shows the beach taken from a drone, and you can see the waves washing right over the beach. This is the major tourist beach in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and you can see in this video the sand washing across the roads and onto the land. At the end of the beach, you can see they've built seawalls, and wherever they've built the seawalls, the beach in front is washed away completely. In the distance, you see the waves breaking along the old coral reef. That coral reef is what built this beach in the first place. It protected the sand from washing away, and it provided new sand to replace that was removed. That beach is disappearing now because that reef is almost dead. The structure is collapsing. It's not generating new sand. And the only way to bring this beach back in the long run is going to be to regenerate that reef for the natural coastal protection that reef provides. This video was taken at the other end of the same beach, and it shows that seawalls have completely covered the coastline. When a wave reflects off a solid wall like this, it builds up to twice the height. When it's reflected, all the energy is focused at one point, and what this guarantees is that all the sand in front of the seawall will be washed away, and then all the sand underneath until it collapses. And if you look at this video, you can see several different generations of old supports for old seawalls that used to be there at that point and have now collapsed and are lying in the sea. So this has been going on for a long time. They never work, and they cause constant and never-ending repairs. This beach originally used to be covered with sand dunes that had plants growing right on top of them, like what you see in the background. That traps the sand, and they build up in height, creating high sand dunes. The first thing people did is they pulled up all the vegetation so they could see the beach. And when they removed the vegetation, the wind blew the sand away, and the whole beach went much lower and flatter. The Coalición Restauración Ecosistemas Santurcinos are growing back these sand dunes by planting vegetation out. And where they do that, they turn situations like this, with a seawall that's about to collapse with massive erosion in front, into growing sand dunes. Here's a young sand dune starting out, and they get taller and taller with age. So by regenerating the natural ecosystems, we can build back the natural coastal protections along the coastline. In contrast to natural ecosystems, hard seawalls cause erosion. You can see here in this picture, waves reflecting off the seawall on the right have caused the beach on the left to wash away. This is typical of, and it's inevitable as a result of reflection from hard surfaces. This island is Pulau Ganga in Indonesia, it's North Sulawesi, and what you can see here is the villagers have had for a long time a huge problem with erosion. Their beaches washed away, they've been desperately throwing concrete and wood and everything into the ocean to keep their houses from falling in. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. All of these structures keep falling down. They have to build new ones in front of them to protect them or in back of them once they go, and it's a very costly failure. In this village, the government spent a lot of money to build this huge seawall, and what it did is it caused the beach in front of it to wash away, and then the wall began to be undermined, was about to collapse. So then they had to spend even more money to dump a huge pile of rocks in front to keep the wall from falling down. This happens with every seawall that's ever been built. It's a costly failure, and it causes the beach to disappear. Just around the corner from this erosion site, here's a beach that we've grown back at record rates using Biorock reefs. You can see on the right, the small dots in the water are about 50 small Biorock reefs in staggered rows that break up the waves before they hit the shoreline. This beach had almost washed away too, and we grew it back at record rates. When we began, as you can see, this building was about to collapse into the ocean. There was a cliff on the sand beach. It had been retreating inland for years. They kept having to move these buildings inland before they fell in. This tree on the right that you see had collapsed and fallen into the ocean. The next month, we built the Biorock reefs in front, and you can see those on the left as those small dots. That beach immediately grew back. This photograph was taken 8 months later. That's the same building that was about to collapse, the same tree that had fallen in, and 80% of that beach growth took place in just a few months. But it's continued ever since. It's never slowed down. So that beach that used to be concave upward now is convex and growing and getting wider. We've grown the whole beach up about 1.5 meters in height. We've grown it a couple hundred meters in length. We've grown about 20 or 30 meters wider. And we've done that by regenerating the coral reefs and seagrasses in front. This is part of one of those small Biorock reefs. The seagrasses are growing like mad. The corals have grown right up through it, in some cases 20 centimeters or more. We've created habitat for fish, for crabs, for shrimp, for worms, sea urchins, and all forms of marine life. We've regenerated the ecosystem. What's more amazing is, not only did we grow back a severely eroded beach at rates that no one had ever seen before, the cost of doing so is about 10 times less than what a concrete or rock seawall at the same site would have cost. And that concrete or rock seawall would have killed the ecosystems and the fisheries in front and not regenerated any of the natural services. Not only are we protecting the shoreline from waves and regenerating biodiversity in this site, we're also producing new sand because we're producing large amounts of coralline algae that make up the sand grains on the beach. Here's a severely eroding beach at a resort in the Maldives, where every island is washing away, trees are falling into the sea, and they're desperately piling sandbags so they had any kind of beach for their tourists. What we did in front of this severely eroding beach, this is in 1997, is we grew a Biorock reef right in front of that beach and transplanted corals onto it. Here are the new structures that you see that we put on. When we put them down, there was no sand there. They were sitting on bare rock. As the limestone grew on the structures and as the corals grew on them, the waves passed through, slowed down, the sand piled up under the structures, and the beach grew very rapidly. Within a year, that beach had grown back. That building you see in the background had been about to fall into the sea, and the hotel said there was no way they could possibly save it, that they were going to have to tear it down. And we grew that beach back in a few months. And in this picture here, you can see the dark line is the Biorock reef. That's a new beach we grew back, and the sandbag picture was taken on the left. That building we saved was on the right. The year after we built this reef, in 1998, they had record high temperatures, and 99% of the corals in the reef in front died in about a week or two from high temperatures. Most of the corals on the Biorock reef survived. They were just much healthier and stronger. So all the fish moved out of the dead reef into the Biorock reef. And for many years, that was the only hotel in the Maldives that had a natural beach with a reef full of living corals and fish right in front of it. This is that beach about 10 years later. The Asian tsunami passed right over this beach, washed people off the island, and did no damage either to the beach or the Biorock reef. This is the beach at Taman Sari Resort in Pemuteran in Bali. When we began this project, this beach wasn't there at high tide. Those trees were all falling into the sea. They'd built a small concrete wall to prevent them from collapsing into the ocean. You had to jump from the wall into the sea at high tide. That beach has grown back. We built about 150 biorock reefs in front of this area, and like the Maldives project, using a couple air conditioners worth of electricity. And over the years, those 150 biorock reefs have slowed down the waves, and this beach has been steadily growing for 20 years here. This wasn't there. These deck chairs that you see here couldn't be put there. They'd wash away into the sea at high tide, so we've grown that whole beach back. And it's just come back. And more interestingly, we've changed the color of the beach. This was a black volcanic sand beach, and we're producing so much new white sand from organisms growing on the biorock reefs, we're actually changing the color of the beach with the new white sand that we add to it. Here on the island of Gili Trawangan and Lombok, we have about 150 biorock reef structures. The whole island makes its living off ecotourism and diving on the biorock reefs. In this case, these are small experimental structures we built to protect small resorts whose beach had washed away, the trees were falling into the sea. We built small biorock reefs. Here they're exposed at low tide. That was because the erosion was so severe we wouldn't have normally done that. So they're underwater at high tide. And what you could see is that within 8 months on Google Earth, you could see the beach growing back behind the biorock reefs. We could actually see it from satellites when we were growing the sand back in places where the trees had been falling into the ocean. At another location on the same island, we built biorock reefs in front of the hotel that's marked with the blue star. They'd built a seawall that was about to collapse into the ocean. It had been built 1 year before, and when we began this project, there was a gap underneath that seawall and was about to fall down. This is a year after we did the project. We built up the height of the sand about 1 meter, and it filled in the gap underneath the seawall and started piling up sand in front of it. In contrast, if we look at the neighbor that didn't have a biorock reef in front of it, their erosion simply continued, as you can see from these trees falling to the sea. If we now go past that tree on the horizon that fell down and look at their neighbor, that seawall was built 2 years before at the same time as the seawall that we saved. That shows you how ineffective they are in comparison to biorock reefs. Biorock methods work in all marine ecosystems, not just coral reefs. In cold waters, we grow oyster reefs. This project here at a toxic waste dump in New York City is growing oysters using solar panels and also salt marsh grass, which you see in the foreground. They couldn't grow there because it was so toxic. With a small trickle charged through that solar panel, the salt marsh grass grows taller, greener, thicker, denser, and is able to grow into conditions where it normally couldn't grow. These ecosystems are all washing away due to sea level rise, and we can grow them seaward. Not only has the growth of oysters in the salt marsh there stabilized the sand, it's actually grown a new beach back at that site. This beach survived Hurricane Sandy without any damage when many other beaches in New York City washed away. Now, what we can do as well is we also grow back seagrasses. This is in the Mediterranean. Here we're growing back seagrass on a small mesh using solar panels. And here what's really amazing is we're growing seagrass on bare rock. No one had ever done that before. Seagrass needs 5 or 10 centimeters of sediment or sand or mud for their roots to grow in. Here we got such prolific root growth that they attached to bare sand. They built up a whole ecosystem of oysters, mussels, shrimp, crabs, and fishes all around them, and they grew like mad. The controls we made without electricity in the biorock method all died. So we're able to generate seagrasses. We can do this with any marine ecosystem, mangroves or fisheries habitat. The Bikini Atoll people were thrown off their island in 1946 so that it could be used for nuclear bomb tests. They've never been able to go back. They've been exiled onto islands that are now 50 to 75% flooded by seawater due to rising sea level, which began only in 2011. It's killed their fruit trees and contaminated all their wells. This is the school on Edgewood Island where many of the refugees live on. And at high tide and storm waves, those waves are breaking inside that school building. They come right up to the top of the edge there, and the whole compound is underwater. Here I'm growing a small biorock reef in front of that school with the idea to try to grow back a beach and protect that shoreline and try to create a future for the school children of Bikini Atoll so they have an island to live on in the future. All conventional coastal protection methods using seawalls and breakwaters from concrete and rocks have proven to be costly failures in the long run. They all fall down, they all cause erosion in front and under them, and it's sheer madness to keep repeating the same sorts of mistakes expecting a different result. It's time now to regenerate our coastal ecosystem, protect our coasts, and grow the blue economy by using biorock electric reef technology. Biorock regenerates severely eroded beaches at record rates by regenerating all natural coastal ecosystems. They do so at a fraction of the cost of what a rock wall would cost, while providing all these benefits of sand and fisheries and everything else. Biorock reefs grow faster than global sea level rise, so they can keep up with global climate change. And they can be intelligently designed to evolve and change to meet changing needs caused by global warming and global climate change, so we can change them constantly. Biorock provides the lowest cost solutions to the widest range of coastal management problems, and Biorock technology should be used wherever it provides the most cost-effective benefits and solutions to problems. For more information on applying Biorock technology to solve your coastal management problems, please contact Blue Regeneration SL, and for nonprofit organizations, the Global Coral Reef Alliance. Thank you.